Of course, is a brilliant thing for the young birds to do, but older birds that are not required for anything in particular are often put in aviaries, sometimes in multiple aviaries with different sizes of birds. As long as they have plenty of food, then they don't tend to squabble. And we put Sydney at 18 years of age in an aviary with a couple of white-tailed sea eagles, which is a European version, I guess, of a bald eagle. And there was also another bald eagle in there called Archie. And then we noticed something fairly strange going on. Sydney and Archie started sitting side by side each other, and then they were sort of tickling each other at the back of the neck and things like that. And that's quite weird for boys. Normally boys sit about a metre apart with their chest puffed up and talk about girls and how great they were, and the people flying over the tops of them with an inch to spare. Whoa! Now, you're not supposed to fly into a post either. You're supposed to be paying attention where you're going. So Frank is actually a bird that's now in his first full year of working here at the castle. When he arrived here, he was brown all over. He actually only had, well, a couple of feathers that were beige, and essentially these beige feathers are going to cover all of his body eventually, and they will be his adult plumage. And the adult plumage of an Egyptian vulture is basically beige. He'll have a custard yellow head, and that is again at about 3 years of age. Now Frank has a few issues in life. As a small vulture, he is often at the back of the queue, and in fact, to be honest, he's always at the back of the queue. So if there was a large dead animal here, hundreds of vultures all bouncing around trying to get a mouthful of meat, Frank is always at the back of the queue, which sort of makes him an angry bird. He spends most of his life biting other vultures up the backside, hoping to get onto that wall of meat. And to be honest, most of the time he just gets a bigger bite back and then learns that very important lesson that well, there is a pecking order in the wild. So Frank does have angry issues, and if you're a vulture like Frank in the wild, very often one of the best things that you can do is actually not compete with those big vultures, but actually do your own kind of work. And he's a bit of an entrepreneur, really. For a and he lands on the floor and bites me in the leg. Most people think this is actually quite funny, and it is, but I have to ignore bad behaviour and concentrate on positive behaviour. So I just sort of let him get away with a little bit of jiggery-pokey for a couple of moments, and then what I do, I make sure that I don't reward him, and of course then I just pick him up, and then he will normally resume his day job, which is to fly around over the tops of people's heads. Now, he was trained here in winter time, which is some of the birds go to North Yorkshire, but Frank, because he's an Egyptian vulture from Africa and southern Spain, is not really equipped to deal with that harsh weather that we have in North Yorkshire. So he was trained here in winter time, and to be honest, it's a quiet time. There's quite a lot of people here today, but in winter time, in January especially, and February, it is incredibly quiet here. We usually have our prevailing wind, which is blowing up in this direction, which does mean that for training younger birds that need that fresh air underneath the wings, it is great, but it is a very quiet time of year, and getting him to focus on going round over the tops of people's heads like this was something that we were always very keen on. We had a fantastic set of circumstances that resulted in Frank learning this job pretty much on his first day out, and well, I'll give you the circumstances. It's quite funny actually. I mean, really, and all we've had to do is tweak it a little bit and make it work. But every now and again, when he thinks that everything's not going his way, then he does land on the floor, and we just have to sort of work through this. And he is a very, very, very bright bird indeed. To get into an egg, incidentally, out in the wild, he steals baby birds out of nests, but one of his favourite things is eggs. He has to get inside an egg. Small eggs he can break with his beak, but when it comes to an egg the size of a chicken egg and beyond, then he has to start using tools.